My name is Steve SLV. I'm half of the Hood Internet, which is sort of a DJ production crew. I'm at the DJ Tech Tools HQ in downtown San Francisco.
Off top, I'm bossed up. You ain't talking money, don't talk to us. I'm steady stacking that guac up. Ball hard than you when I'm locked up. You type jet pop up when you roll neck. Got mine growing like grapevines in the backyard. Come look, bruh. I pull up, hop out, bad jet pop out. Hey, better watch out.
The Hood Internet got started in 2007. Aaron, ABX, and I were playing in a band together, and we had sort of both experimented in the past with kind of loop-based production software. Aaron used Cool Edit Pro was his drug of choice, and I was using Sonic Foundry's Acid version 3.0. We had messed around with that stuff a lot and really enjoyed kind of deconstructing songs that we liked and kind of turning them into beats that had more of the kind of the arrangement of a rap song, like verse, chorus, verse, and we would have like friends rap over them. And then in 2007, we sort of took that same idea and started collecting acapellas from like record rips or the internet, and using those to mix with the beats we were constructing out of bands like Broken Social Scene or whatever. We had the hoodinternet.com reserved for no good reason well before we started posting these mashups that we were making to the website. That's a line from Cameron's Kill a Season movie. It's sort of, you should watch it. I think it's on Google Videos still. So we decided that would be the name for this little kind of depot for where we were putting all our mashups. A few months into that, like some music websites like Gorilla vs. Bear kind of took notice of it and sent some traffic our way, and there was a really great interest. In the early days, we would post like 3 to 4, sometimes 5 a week. Just kind of like threw everything we could against the wall and see what stuck. A local Chicago publication, The Chicagoist, was doing an anniversary show, and they asked us if we wanted to DJ. And we had no idea how, so we said yes. And that was sort of the beginning of learning how to perform what we were doing live. What people pinpoint the Hood Internet for, what sets us apart, is what we're sampling. I think the most common thing that people note us for is mixing indie rock with hip hop, which is it's a really wide umbrella, but that is a lot of what we do. Grabbing things from our own personal music collections, our own interests, and sampling those. So it's just sort of the music that we already like is what we're sampling from. Some of the first mashups I heard were kind of in the Napster era, like you would hear, like a Britney Spears vocal over a Eminem beat or something like that. Something that wasn't, it was 2 gigantic hits already. And we were, I think, trying to dig a little deeper than that, like sample things that were as commercial as R. Kelly, but also like try to, get hieroglyphics acapellas or things like that. Just really go all across the board with what we would sample from. I think the first thing I would tell 2007 Hood Internet is to just be conscious of the fidelity of your audio if you're going to be DJing and like playing the tracks out. Make sure that the sample source is of the highest quality possible. Spend some time listening to things on different speakers. Once you finish a track, listen to it in your car stereo, listen to it on your studio monitors, put it on at a party and listen to it across the room. That's, I think, the best way to sort of take bedroom production and give it the field test. I think that also influenced the original productions we make on the record that we put out last year on Decon, FEAT. The years of making Hood Internet tracks sort of influenced how we would approach that, like, making sure all the drums sounded nice and all the keyboards sounded as, just trying to get everything to sound as best as it could, which is something we weren't paying attention to at the beginning.
I can't compare to her, but I can make you special.
We both have different approaches. When we work on stuff together, ABX and I are rarely in the same room. It's a lot of kind of working in an Ableton project, zipping it up and sending it over. ABX and I came from a background of playing in bands, and anytime we would go into the studio, the drums get recorded first. And I think that sort of mentality is still how we look at things. It's not always the drum beat comes first, but it's kind of the first thing that I think needs to be, for us, like the foundation, or at least something close to it has to be in place before the rest of the song comes together. So there might be like a simple keyboard line of a chord progression, or if we've like found a sample that we're gonna use, kind of get that in place and start building a drum beat around it. And once that, at least a loose foundation of that drum part is in place, how the song might be arranged, that's when everything else kind of comes in together on top of it. It does generally start with the drums.
How long until you don't forget me?
Almost all of the production we do is in Ableton Live. We each have a couple of, like I have like a micro Korg and just some things like guitars and basses around the studio, and a couple of MIDI controllers, but I have like a smaller Akai one that comes out with me on the road so I can compose stuff there. Well, I first had a trigger finger, and that kind of broke after being in my backpack for a few years. Lost all the knobs, all the faders, and eventually it just stopped working. Since they don't make those anymore, I have now a MPD-18 that I use to kind of get a bunch of drum sounds readied up in Ableton, connected to that to kind of like play patterns live when I'm first starting to figure out how they'll like go around a keyboard sound or go around a bass line. Well, in making mashups for the website, that I think it's a pretty easy thing to finish, because in terms of like if you're sampling a wave of some song, like it's kind of already been mixed and mastered and it's there. And you need to do some tweaks to how like the other parts you put on there sit atop of it. But the mixing is mostly already done. Those are easy, but in making an original track, it's a lot more of a process, and it is, it's hard to know when it's done. You can usually feel it. When a song feels together, like we fortunately have enough history of like kind of writing and recording stuff in the bands we had played in the past, so that really helped, I think. There's plenty of stuff that ends up on the digital cutting room floor, and some of it should, because some of it's terrible. But we, more often than not, we finish things. And sometimes you have a whole finished product that gets all the way done, and that's when you decide to scrap it or not. When Hood Internet got started in 2007, that was maybe the height of mashup culture in sort of the public eye. Girl Talk Tonight Ripper had come out the year before, and that's what opened a lot of people's ears to that. But around the same time, people had already declared it as dead. The Chicago Reader wrote an article about Hood Internet when we first came out, and they referred to it as soulless. It's kind of, you're taking these two or more things that already exist and kind of reassembling them. The way that it was referred to as soulless means like you didn't put the soul into like these raps, and you didn't put the soul into these these songs that are coming from. And I would say there's some truth to that. It's sort of like the reassembly of things is what's fun about it, and that's what a lot of people I think get out of it. And we're especially like around that time when it was so popular on the internet, people were just really enjoying the sort of cleverness of like, oh, it's part A and part B, and holy shit, now it's part C is a whole new thing. And that sort of, I think the sort of fun you get from that kind of music is there's like a limit to it. But Girl Talk, I think, is a great example, because he definitely stays in his style, like makes these same kinds of records, and each one is a totally unique bank of like hundreds of samples. It also sort of builds up his library for when he performs them live, and just can like string them together in different and interesting ways each time. And I think that we have, while our songs are, like I explained earlier, more like single based, we've sort of built ourselves this library that now like we have so much to choose from. If you go to SoundCloud and search around, there are a lot of people that do this sort of thing now. I remember real early on, we had this one person that would like troll our comment section and be like, this is okay, but my version where I sampled this song is better, and it was just like, I still see some of that in like just artists that make mashup tracks and post them to SoundCloud, and there's like, oh, this version is good, but I've, like so-and-so already sampled this song, and it's sort of like, well, everything's out there for everyone to sample. I think what mashup culture does is sort of like, it really rejects the idea of a song having to be presented a certain way, and people can sort of chop it up and reappropriate it however they think fits, what they're trying to make. The first time we performed live was just kind of a wild disaster. The songs were not prepared for a good system, and we could really hear it right off the bat. So Ableton was a pretty new piece of software. Like I said, we had been using Acid and Cool Edit Pro, but Ableton seemed to have some good capabilities for DJing using kind of their session mode. So we tried to focus on the tracks that sounded nice on the dance floor already. Like a real trebly, tinny rock band like the Thermals might not sound so great in a mix on the dance floor. You'd have to really, do a lot more work with it than the work we had been doing with mashups. So we found that some of the more dancey tracks that we were sampling really reflected well playing live show. And that's, you know, I think what we try to accomplish over the course of a live set is to get people to dance. So we focus mostly on those tracks. On this current tour that we're doing, opening for Black Moss Super Rainbow, we've got some LED lighting that was built by the former lighting director of Metro Smart Bar in Chicago. He sort of is a friend of ours. On this particular tour, we're sort of using Ableton to also run those, which is, it's sort of a chain of 3 applications. Ableton sends MIDI, like every time a song is launched, MIDI note is sent over to a video program called Modulate, and Modulate sort of runs the light show that's synced to that song. And then that goes to a program called MadMapper, which sends the DMX lighting information to the LEDs themselves. I actually sort of wrote the lighting for each song. That's what the few weeks leading up to the tour, I spent very many late nights kind of like programming what the lights for any particular song might be. We're making a few more mixtapes this year that, you know, are pretty standard fare of what you'd come to expect from the Hood Internet. You know, I think that there's so much great stuff that could be sampled that I don't think I want to like actually do all the paperwork to like clear the samples for. So just make music to like put out for free on the internet, because that seems to be pretty acceptable nowadays. No one's really going after you for that. You might see a record from us next that's, you know, maybe a little bootleggy in its approach to like how we make the songs, and but with some new raps from Chicago artists on there.
A touch truthful, but ain't that the usual? We don't say much. I draw the shades up while the sun wakes up. I know what